providing air conditioning. You don't want any, units sitting out in the bushes, heading up to a window, like you can at some of the other more modern, buildings. So he pulled together some quick numbers, basically based on square footage. You can see at the bottom, it's $15 to $35 a square foot. And if you replaced everything and upgraded and put in new that didn't have them, you're looking at a $35 million to $40 million ticket. And I'm gonna work with Arisman and Associates to get down a number to air condition, as an example, the classrooms. That's where the critical part is, when we get the complaints from teachers, parents, etc. And there are some classrooms that are not air conditioned, obviously. So we can narrow it down to start there, and then we also can look at replacing and upgrading current systems, like at Grosse Pointe North. At some point, you might have to upgrade the systems there. I know they put in a separate system when they put the administration over at the rear of the building at Grosse Pointe North. But so a more detailed report, I'm going to ask Eric to kind of pull those numbers together and take into consideration the architectural integrity of the building, whether you put them on the roof, whether you want to go with unit ventilators. There's all sorts of ways to skin that cat. So this just gives you a ballpark idea. If we wanted to say tomorrow we're going to go full throttle, it's going to be a $40 million ticket, roughly. So what our goal is this year is to get a more definitive amount that's a little closer to reality, not just based on square footage.
Chris, is this something now, how does this all play into our contractual obligation with Plant Moran Grosse?
Nothing really. They can't work on it because we don't have any funding to make this happen. So it's really, there's no issue there.
Okay, so then do you envision this then being a direct relationship with Arisman and then going to look for a direct HVAC vendor versus?
Each building is a little unique, so it'll all depend on the building.
Okay.
The beauty of you working with them, and Steffi knows the buildings too, but they have a better understanding of the issues in particular. And if we want to concentrate, at least initially, on looking at classroom air conditioning, then we can head down that road with the idea that eventually, I mean, systems get old. I mean, you gotta replace even the Grosse Pointe North. I mean, we've replaced chillers in the past, and that's quite an experience. They gotta drop it in with a helicopter.
Right.
So there's no easy fix for a lot of these buildings. So I think, and Arisman has a lot of the detail already. Because we looked at this many years ago, and I obviously has to update it and look at the buildings because we've had changes. But I think the other issue I want to get to in a minute, I don't know if it's even on here. Well,
It's okay.
We want to look at the long-term, the millage renewals and the sinking fund renewal. Last time we went out was November 19, so we're coming about that 5-year mark. So we want to put a package together for the next another 5 years, for example, using a 1 mil. You know, what can we get? What can we designate out of that millage for example, air conditioning versus other projects that are still there.
Are we still using PFM for that, or who do we deal with as far as the consultants on the millages?
I think on the millage initially, we're gonna be talking with, Miller Canfield.
As far as the analysis of the millage, as
Yes,
far as?
yeah.
Okay.
We could, I'll talk with, Andy one more time to find out that.
Cause I recall before John left, he had mentioned something, he wanted me to meet with PFM and from Andy.
Yeah, we can, we still have to set up that meeting yet.
Okay.
But, so that's, as part of the budget process, which we're gonna get into, the timing of those millages and the sinking fund will be discussed, and how do we wanna package this? Plus, looking at maybe the packaging of another bond issue.
Right.
And we're meeting with, Stempian to go over some of the projects that remain, that we need, et cetera, to come up with kind of a master list, which, you know, I know Mandy has done and others have done, so be able to present that to this group to at least get the discussion going on sinking fund and the bond issues.
Do we have a master list of, in other words, we have the sinking funds, what, $3 or $4 million a year?
Yeah, just about 3 million.
Okay, now where is that being spent this coming year?
We have, a number of projects, including parking lots, and I've got a list of those I can provide to the committee.
Okay, that would be great.
And the maximum of that could be possibly double,
If you doubled that, to 2 mils, for example, yes.
and that's the max you could do.
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Are we still getting the Wayne County enhancement millage? There was a Wayne County millage that we got beyond the sinking fund,
Yes, I believe so. No, I gotta look at that. It's a good point.
like 2 or 3 million, I thought it was.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that.
I thought she told us at the last meeting that it's still, it will still be coming, but it's reduced.
It's based on enrollment, yeah. Where-
Number of students in the county.
Right. It's based on total enrollment and total by district, so, we're a net giver.
Right,
That millage goes into the Wayne County pot and then they.
we
divide
pay in
up.
more than we get back.
Yes,
Yeah,
and we always have.
yeah. Okay, you wanna go over the enrollment update?
Okay, I don't have anything to pass out. Roy and I have been looking virtually daily, on the enrollment update. We're pretty close to where we predicted. Our official count date is tomorrow, Roy?
Say that one more time?
Our official count date.
Yes, count day is tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, October 4th.
So I talked to the enrollment office today, and we're gonna hopefully get some good numbers. It's the tenths and the 2/10. For example, the homeschool people can enroll, for extra courses at the high school. We gotta make sure those are all, I's are dotted and T's crossed. We have to make sure we don't have a double count. So, students sometimes is at north and they're at south for the afternoon classes or whatever. And they sometimes count them as a full body at all. We weeded through those weeds and are ironing those out. So I think we're gonna be pretty close to our projection.
Okay, that's good news.
But we'll have hopefully at least a preliminary report in the next few weeks for you. Let's see.
The next item that we had, did anybody have any questions, I'm sorry, on the AC issue?
I just have one question. So do you think it's safe to say that we wouldn't be able to do this without a bond? I mean, given all the funding that's in sinking funds, and we're always gonna have other projects, and we need a bond to do this.
I think so, but I think maybe there's a couple critical areas you could do through a sinking fund to get those done, but, let's say we're talking at half that amount, 15 million, it's a big ticket. So I think you gotta go with a bond issue.
Do you mean like if we did it piecemeal, like we went to like, for instance, South, it's the biggest population, we would target that first?
Oh, that's another issue, because you got these elementary kids in some of the buildings that don't have, AC in the classroom, so.
Yes.
That's always an issue. I remember a long time ago, I think I told Ahmed this story, I told Roy. I was blamed by some people that, we didn't have AC because I didn't plug it in. Well, wasn't that simple. And that amount for the classrooms back then, this is a long time, was like $900,000 just for that. So I know that's way
Yeah.
up there.
And we walked through some of the buildings on Friday that were
Yeah.
clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One other issue, that I wanted to bring your attention, we talked about it briefly. There's two projects that, we're gonna go out to bid on. One is the scoreboard, the swimming scoreboard at South. It's not working properly, and we've had various electricians in there to look at it to see if it's fixed, and it can't be restored to how it is operating. So we're gonna go out to bid. We've got, received a lot of calls from swim parents and, coaches and administrators about the scoreboard. So we're gonna go out to bid, see what the numbers are. I don't have a funding source for that yet. I say we don't have a funding source yet. but we wanna get the numbers so we know what we're looking at.
Got it.
And then we have another, the other issue that is a hot issue, which it has not been resolved yet, is the tennis courts at Grosse Pointe City. They're needing, replacement and upgrades. There's some discussion with the city, because we basically split that cost 50-50. And, the problem is, coming up with their 50. So we're still working on that.
Chris, why wouldn't we, if they're in a situation like that, if we have a contractual agreement with them, I mean, it's not like they can't borrow the $50,000.
I think they have a couple options, and we have a couple options too. We could, I know you don't wanna hear this, but we could pay for the whole thing, and then
Charge it back.
and get their money the next year.
I mean, the bottom line is that, from what I understand from parents, it's a liability issue.
Yeah, that always gets raised. Yeah, I can say, not that this, and don't leave this that I'm proposing. They've been worse, but that's not a reason not to do them.
Right.
They got it, and those things last, 10 years. It's like, it's like your streets.
We
You
had,
put-
sorry.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
No, I didn't, sorry.
No, it just, when you resurface those things, we were living in Michigan, they don't last as long.
Well, did we have this problem last year, didn't we? I mean, I
Yeah.
think we've had the same discussion.
Yeah, we just,
So they still haven't been fixed,
right.
okay, cause we still are trying to come up with the money.
What's the total ticket?
That I don't know, I can get that for you. I have an estimate, I don't have it with me.
Got it.
And I think that's it.
Okay, we had item 3.2 was, we had talked in our prior meetings about reporting. We started talking about the reporting the last time we were with Amanda, and a number of you brought up that we wanna get some direction there. And, one of the things, we have a tool that I didn't know we had until I found this out recently, that we use a tool called Munetrics.
Right.
And what do we use that for, Chris? Cause I don't see any end product coming out to the public on that.
Well, schools use that, or they use,
There's another one that they
it's
use,
a smart system over at Wayne County.
yeah,
Those are basically your two options. We've been using the smart system. I talked to Mandy, we're gonna see if we can't do what's it called?
Munetrics.
Munetrics. And see if we can pull that up and see if that will be helpful for us.
Oh, I
Some
thought,
schools use it, some don't.
okay, I was under the impression we already had that.
I think we have it, we just gotta kick out the reports.
Okay, because one of the things that, had come up at prior meetings is, and I think it was pretty much unanimous on the committee, is that we were looking to get more site level, picture as far as where we sit by building. And, I don't know that Munetrics has that feasibility. They're more, as I understood it, they're more of take reports from the state and bring them down.
Right, and what we're generating right now that we publish is required by the state. We have to publish the check register.
Right.
But if you look at the check register, you can't tell what fund it's coming out of, which makes a big difference. And, most of it comes out of the general fund, but we write a lot of checks out of the trust and agency fund. And so there's not a lot of flexibility there to change that format. We're pursuing that, but that kind of fell down to on the
Low
list
priority.
of top 5 things to do.
Okay, well, I had asked, Brendan, I know he's made a number of improvements to his program. I asked him to come real briefly and walk through what his program does and see how maybe that can interface, and maybe that gives us some of the information that we're looking for.
So I've shown versions of this before, but I just wanted to give you a quick view here. But in this case, users are logging in through the website. I pulled up Brighton as a customer of mine, This happens to be what their report looks like, and it's an interactive page where you can cycle through and if you gaze kind of on the left here, you get a sense of all of the different report categories that are embedded within here.
Is this what their stakeholders look at, Brendan, or is this what who gets to see this?
The board and whatever, and the administration and whoever they choose to.
Okay, so it's
share.
not on their website, so to speak.
It can be, they haven't chosen to put it up there yet,
Got it.
but it can be.
Thank you.
I've built on Grosse points, but a couple things here to point out. Not everybody is as comfortable with cycling through an interactive website, so what we've done for Brighton is actually created a hardbound report that is in a binder that all of the board members and administration see, and you can get a sense of, this here will show you the every report that is included in their benchmark report and also embedded on the website as well. But basically what I try to do in creation of this is, having studied this topic for 20 years, is try to find as many creating reports that are truly useful to board members and the public, because most of, as you just mentioned, most of what you see in this space are just raw blob numbers, like what Metrics does, and there's really not much you can do with it. As an example, let's say we're looking at just aggregate annual spend, and some of you may recall that over the last few years, the state has been funneling millions of dollars through local school districts to pay off legacy MIPSER's unfunded liability. That shows up as an expenditure on the local district level and would be aggregated within your report, but locally you have no control over that, and it's really not particularly representative of any financial decision.
That's a UAAL
Yeah.
flow through?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and there's scores of other examples, and so basically what, in my experience on the board and working with other board members, the intent has been to try to create more unique views that actually help you learn something. So for example, economic disadvantage is not something that are compared across districts too often, but it's a huge factor in school district operations. So in any of these cases, I've got the raw data for the school system, but we also benchmark it against other districts. So in this case, I'm pulling up the economically disadvantaged benchmark report. So you can see here, Grosse Pointe is here. So this is a good example of a report that people kind of assume if it's a like district, it's really like us. But in this case, if you take a look at Northville Schools has less than half of our free and reduced lunch population, which is a huge factor in all your programming decisions and things of that nature. So you don't see this kind of data too commonly from the state level. Here, similarly, is a special education profile. This report happens to show what percentage of the student population has an IEP and is receiving special education services. So this is another example where you've got really wide variance from district to district. Here in this case, you can see that Novi is about half of Grosse Pointe's special education.
Is that because we're a host district, or is that?
With all of these things, I think what you find when you start dumpster diving through school data is you get a lead on something and it raises that question. I wonder why that's the case. And then you generate, and what I've done as much as I can is added data that would allow you to kind of further your analysis and reach your own conclusions on what you think that is. But these are some of the more difficult to obtain data points that services like Munetrix, and then they don't do it because it's really hard and you can't just push it out to 500 school districts and do it. In this case, this is the district and county millage rates that are not, these are not things that are off the tip of your tongue, even for board members who are pretty well versed. So you can get a sense of how does our millage profile compare to the benchmark districts that we've selected here. So these are some of the key features.
So what is that telling us, Brendan, in this particular chart?
On this particular chart, what we can see is that most of the districts are in a pretty narrow band in terms of their aggregate district and county millage rates, but some are definitely outliers. Rochester has particularly low millage rates. Some of the factors that contribute to that, you can see here's our friend, the hold harmless millage, the big blob that they've got there in Birmingham and Bloomfield, and to a lesser extent here in Grosse Pointe. The famous county enhancement millage, not too many districts have them, but we can see that Grosse Pointe does, Forest Hills does to a lesser degree, Chippewa Valley does. So it just helps, so in a lot of cases, debt millage is a big one, but Chris could talk quite a bit about that, but you notice here Chippewa Valley, their debt millage is almost 9 mils. I mean, this is one of the things that happens for districts that they basically, when you're capped on operational millage, a lot of these districts crank up their debt millage.
Well, what they do is they, like Chippewa and Utica did as well, when a millage was debt was expiring, they quickly go out, not quickly, they go out and ask for another bond, and they can go to the taxpayers and say, this bond will not increase your taxes. Your millage rate was 9 mils, it's gonna be 9 mils. And they routinely did that, schools like Utica and Chippewa.
Is that why Chippewa has such a high fund equity?
A ton of them do,
Yeah.
a ton of them really worked over their bond millage to shore up and offload as much as they could off the general fund onto debt millage. So you'll notice that a lot of districts have, 8, 9, outstate districts, not uncommonly have 8, 9 mils on, for their debt. So this is one of the, as an interested consumer and taxpayer, I always wanted, this is really hard to aggregate, and that's why I put it in here. I did a lot of work on Z-scores, and Z-scores and proportional spend, because comparing raw numbers district to district is close to meaningless, because they all have different revenue profiles, they have different building configurations, they do all kinds of things differently. So I can share more details for those who are interested in terms of, the educators here know what the Z-score does. But it basically normalizes data and then distributes across a bell curve, and when your Z-score is any greater than 1.5 or 2 or gets up to 3, you're definitely out of skew and out of line with the districts to whom you're comparing yourself to. So in this case, Grosse Pointe instructional spend and aggregate support services spend are all within one Z-score point either way. But when you start getting into some of the finer numbers, here in this case we see school administration has a Z-score of 1.46, so that's creeping on the higher end.
That's because we have smaller schools.
I personally think it's most likely because, given significant enrollment declines, that building administration hasn't scaled down with it, so therefore it's going to be at a bit of a higher proportion. So similarly with, we've talked a lot about this before, here is the sub areas of non-instructional support services. So you can see we're above 1 in general administration, we're almost at 3 in operations and maintenance, we're 2 below on transportation. We expect that since our transportation costs are so low, and then kind of middle of the road on other support services. So it's the kind of data that allows someone to get a reliable statistical view on where spend is appreciably higher or lower, because you can get lost in the weeds on, gosh, don't we spend a lot of money on X? Well, statistically, we don't. you know,
So
I mean,
this
that
is
doesn't
the way
mean we
to
don't look at
compare.
it, but at least it normalizes
So
things.
this is a way to compare district to district, and not have to worry about, well, hold on, they have 13,000 kids, or hold on.
Yeah,
they have- okay.
Exactly right, or what is their military, or what is their, whatever it might be.
You know, and back to what Brenda said, the configuration of the school is important. I mean, we put an emphasis on having a principal in an elementary school of
Right.
X number of kids. To point out an example, we tried to address this many years ago. We had Karen Wells was the
Right.
principal at both North and South High School, and it was a disaster. Nothing that she did wrong,
No,
it just,
Too much.
it's too much. So that's why, that becomes a very hot item, is people want their principal there, and we've done splits on assistants, between middle schools, and we also did a split with, assistant principal at a middle school, helping out an elementary school. The problem is, it can be very cumbersome, and it's not very popular, but, sorry. Greg.
no, that's interesting though, because Roy and I were talking before the meeting about different school systems, and I know going back 5 or 6 years ago, when Troy was looking at some reconfiguration issues, they had sort of a formula that they use on their elementaries, 85% occupied, minimum 400 students. And, you know, if you take and apply that to ours, there's not many elementary schools that would qualify, you know? So it's an interesting paradigm shift to look at the data in that format.
Yeah, and like even something as basic as enrollment, you know, people can kind of quickly dash off a comparison of district to district, when in reality, your spread on enrollment in districts that are commonly compared is huge.
Wow.
And so there's a huge, which swings the needle quite a bit in terms of your proportional spend, which is a big part of what, the analysis is. So like, in proportion, it's kind of a nice way to normalize things, so you're equalizing for, you know, enrollment size and per pupil funding and everything like that. So in this case, this is support services, where you can see, you know, Grosse Pointe pretty much in line with most of the other districts in terms of our pupil services, generally so in school administration, although a little bit high. I mean, a percentage point higher for Grosse Pointe is $1 million. So like, we're spending, you know, an extra $1.5 million as compared to, say, like, look at Bloomfield, they're at 4.5. So Bloomfield they've got a $2 million advantage relative to us in that spend category. So it's a way to help people understand why are we this way, and why are they that way.
So that number, Brendan, again, is I'm trying to read it, 6.7%.
Yeah, 6.7% of our revenues go towards school administration.
So that's building level.
It's any building.
It's not
Yes,
central office.
Yes, so central office is, we could look here. Here is, so in this case, you've got, the central administration is that brighter blue at the bottom. We're 1.5%. We're probably about 0.5% on average higher than most of these districts, so that's, you know, $500,000. But you know, we've talked about this before, there's our big operations and maintenance bill. This is the one that, from a Z-score standpoint, we're nearly 3.
Where's all this data coming from?
State.
So you're pulling all this down from the state?
And then doing a ton of work to organize it so it's useful and not use raw numbers.
All the schools submit the same data to the state. Now, there can be, I should say, some manipulation of the data, and that's where you get into average teacher pay and all that kind of stuff, because it depends on what teachers you're including in that. There's
What would
some,
be an example, Chris, of that?
is how you categorize certain teachers and what, support teachers versus classroom teachers.
Couple other wrinkles I've thrown in it, you know, this is done a lot in a commercial environment where you're really focusing on your year-over-year change to see what happened from last year to this year that brought about the change you're looking at. So I built a year-over-year waterfall report, and it goes back like 10 years, and you can see in each year, you know, what happened. So in this case, this happens to be a change from 21 to 22, and you can see local revenue fell by 4.3 million. Now here's an example where that funky thing happened with the hold harmless millage levy collection. So this is the kind of thing that you look at and say that, how is that even possible? And that kind of alerts you to, let's figure out what happened here, which is one of the great ways to use a waterfall report. So you can really learn a lot from this. I represent on a total and a per pupil basis, but there's almost no state data point that I haven't organized in this way and is accessible to users. And what I've done for customers is I build the hard copy and I add a narrative to each of the graphs. And basically, it's like having for board members, and if you want to make it available to the community, you know, just you want to know why or how or what or when, it's in here.
So that report that you did for Brighton, is that on their website?
They haven't put it on their website, but they may choose to do that.
I'm sorry, I've been asking all the questions, you guys.
Matt Outlaw, superintendent at Brighton, was ecstatic with this. Nobody's doing this. We badly need it. He's got a board that with some new members has really put a focus on transparency, and so that's one of the reasons why he went forward with this. But a lot of good data, a lot of good content that can be used in social media. I mean, it's really raising the bar in terms of transparency for taxpayers in the community.
Good.
Updated anytime there's a GAA audit, et cetera. So we should be seeing the audit, I presume, in a few weeks, and that would all be updated here. And then we'll start building some calculators for budget development.
Well, that's my next question. So how would we use this tool from a budget development standpoint?
Once we have the data, we can build kind of a slimmed down version of the budget modeling utility that we've used in the past, and basically allow users to model different scenarios, per pupil funding, change in enrollment, state grants, etc.
Assume the increases in costs, you can plug
Yeah,
that in there.
you can put percentages in there. You know, we think all indirect costs are gonna go up 3% or so. Purchase services will go up 6%. And we can look back historically and see what they actually did do. So you're building an accurate, a realistic projection.
What's driving this? What program is it?
This happens to be Google Data Studio.
What's that report we looked at last year, the report we used to look at, was
Budget modeling utility, it was, yes, what was there? There were two important pages to that. There was a, oh my gosh, my brain's getting old here.
Well, yeah, we basically took, so you can look back for 3 years to see what actually happened in all those categories, and then you have variable input on your, next 2 years, so that you can model out the changes. It's really helpful because, as Chris would first tell you, you never know what gremlin jumps out at you in the audit, and all of a sudden you need to scramble and figure out what happened and why it happened, and now what we need to do in response to that. But yeah, the budget modeling utility is a key feature that will be embedded in this.
Can you sort the data based on, prior year to current year and compare, so you can see, if there's any sort of trends coming along?
Yeah, tons of trending. So like the one that I really like is the here's a trend of the proportional spend by service function for Grosse Pointe from 2012 to 2023. You can see that black dashed line across the top. That's 100%. So if the spending is above 100%, that means that there was deficit spending in that year. So in those years where you can see what were the movements within some of those proportional spend areas that seem abnormally high. So in this case, let's look at 20 to 21, a full 4.6% or 460 basis point increase in other operating expenses. That's nearly $5 million. So probably COVID expenditures, probably something related to COVID. But you can see that still has not come down much from that 2021 level. So for a lot of districts, there was just an article in the Free Press today about districts needing to respond to their COVID expenditure and making sure they normalize it, because that's exactly where it is. It's in that other operating expenses. But you can also see, I mean, a big jump proportionally in this case.
2020 to 2021 with the blue. What's the blue?
That is basic instruction expense, and I think that was
10%.
That's a case where enrollment dropped precipitously after the district had made its projections, and so therefore staffing levels, particularly teaching staffing levels, were probably $4 or $5 million higher than they would have been proportionally without that enrollment drop.
And a GP virtual.
Yeah, so you've got a lot of those things, that are factors, but you can see, I mean, it doesn't take much. You're off by 2-3 points, and you're $2 or $3 million to the bad.
So in that case, if we look at 2020, we were at 46% for basic instruction, and now we're at 52.5.
Yeah. So and I think that's largely driven, if you look at, so I think it gives you a sense of how you use this. So look at, here's teacher FTE and teacher FTE ratio, so ratio of pupils. So look at that ratio in 20. Not on a benchmark level, 21.7 isn't particularly high, but it's high by Grosse Pointe standards. So it's uniquely high then, but then boom, look at the next year, it takes that big dive. Why? Because enrollment dropped without commensurate staffing adjustments. So the ratio goes up, which is why, you can see how you can get on the hunt with the tool here. You're like, okay, then what was the subsequent impact on whatever pupil teacher ratio or proportional spend in basic instructions or whatever. It's kind of a tool that this makes this guy's life easier, because, hey Chris, can you generate the report on such and such a thing? Why in the world did such a thing go up this much? Or what was that 4 years ago? Or what's happened over the last 6 years with this spend category? It's all there.
So how does this tool vary from Unitrix?
Unitrix doesn't do anything, they don't massage and work with the data at all. They just give you raw data, which is of almost no value in terms of operational decisions in the school district. Like the Mipsters is the best example. Like, what are you gonna do with that? I can't cut that spend, or I can't choose where to put it. My spend all of a sudden looks $4 million higher year over year. People are like, what's wrong with you guys spending like drunken sailors? Well, 3 million of that was Mipsters pass-through.
Right.
So that's those are the gremlins that you gotta look out for when you're trying to figure out what's going on financially with your school district.
Well, my personal opinion we're looking for is, at a board level, high administration level, this is invaluable. I mean, just the information that you can learn from it, and I like the word you said, start the hunt, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not gonna answer or solve all the problems, but it's gonna direct you to where those answers could be.
Right.
And maybe like you said, you get in, you dive into the weeds, and there's an explanation.
Yeah.
All right, great, guess what? You cross that off the list,
Yeah.
right? Now you can move on. But you can do it with the strategic information at your fingertips that you can get like that.
Right, and it gets out of a lot of this, the information requests, well, that's not quite in the right format, or Chris, can't you put
This is where all business, this is where everyone's going, right?
Yeah.
This data analytics where, being able to get to this information quickly and direct your resources, right? Because you got limited resources.
Yeah.
And now you can direct them into the perceived problem.
And I think for board members, those of us who remember what it was like being a new board member, the learning curve is so steep, and to be able to have a binder that answers most of your questions, this is a lot about for board members so that they are on top of it. Yes, administrators that don't spend as much time with the finances. It's just gets everybody grounded in the same set of facts.
Well, I think this is, how often is it updated?
Anytime there's a GAA, or, I mean, anytime the district, you know, has some change, but usually it'd be
Couple
GAA
times a
or
year.
audit.
But you're bringing it down from the state level, the data.
Or the district level, because the district, the state won't have
State doesn't have GAAs.
GAAs or it doesn't have audits, so, except the final audit. So I manually take that and update the data.
I think this is great on a comparison level, but we need to get that to that level of detail in our monthly budget.
Mhm.
The data that, I mean, whether it's Google, what is it called? Sorry.
Data Studio.
I'm used to Power BI, so very
Same
similar
thing.
look, right?
Yeah.
So, when we were talking with Mandy a few months back and talking about, well, we need to do this on a monthly basis, and she said, well, do you know how long it takes to prepare
Yeah.
this budget? And
Should.
it shouldn't, it should take literally hours.
So I can work with Chris on getting whatever that data feed is, and we can build the report, and it will be easy.
But we're talking about two different.
Those are two different things, right?
Two different things.
Yes, yeah, but that can be done too.
But to you're looking at, this is all, I won't say it's old data, but it's aged data, right? As opposed to looking at your budget on a monthly basis.
It's also macro, right? You're talking about getting micro and looking at.
Well, you know, you've got comparison, you had comparison by districts. You need to get, I think it mentioned here, you need to be able to comparison by building, right? To be able to do those things.
Yeah, we can do that, I mean, yeah, we definitely can do it, I mean, it's not, the only thing that has prevented us is we just haven't had the data feed, and if we got the data feed, it's gonna be easy.
And not everything's broken down by building.
Right.
Yeah.
That's another issue you have to deal with.
So Chris, when you get a utility bill in from Mason, for instance, you get electric bill from DT.
Oh, we can get that, but there's $100 million worth of expenses and not everything's by building.
Right.
I mean, the special ed,
Right.
there's all sorts of stuff, not by building. You can get, classroom comparative data, class size, which, what Roy does, but, you know, and the other thing you have to do is make sure it is coded, if you go to that level, it's,
The numbers tie off.
yeah, but you gotta break down things by building. And,
But by fund, I mean, everything's coded by fund, right?
oh, yeah, everything's right, but,
So,
and
having
what
it-
and this is all basically general, correct?
I'll do.
Yeah.
on a monthly check register, you look at last year's year-to-date, or sorry, 2022 fiscal year, Turner's the largest, spent $22 million. Well, clearly that majority of that is bond, but you can't see that, right? You can't, you need to be able to see that detail, and then have that information feed into your, if you want a monthly budget update, if you have that data, creating that monthly budget update that looked just like your GAA is relatively straightforward.
Yeah, once you have the feeds.
I mean, for me, data is key to making decisions. Without data, bullies and bullshitters reign supreme, and you really need that.
Well, two of the biggest, well, I shouldn't say two of the biggest, but, we're gonna have our enrollment numbers pretty much narrowed down. Our fund equity is gonna be pretty much target where we were, I think we might get a little bit extra. So, and thus now then we have to plug into a formula that we got our enrollment, we got our fund equity, we got to figure out an amount, from the state for per pupil. And we can start there to give a general impression where we're going. We know our, staffing, we know the cost of our staffing. So we can, on an initial glance of what does next year look like, or the next budget year, we can at least get a pretty good idea of where we're headed.
Chris, is this something where you could at least sit down with Brendan and say, hey, here's what Metrics does, here's what this does?
Oh, this is totally different than Brendan said.
Totally different.
I think as a board member, as a member of the public, metrics is not of much value, but as a, because it just doesn't, how do you make sense of it? So having something that interprets it and correlates things is.
It's more for treasury management.
I think it's a check the box for transparency. There's a state law that says thou shalt have these reports on your website. I mean, metrics built a product that basically says, yes, this does it, and they charge people 20 grand for it, and I think it's robbery.
Okay, anybody else have any other questions?
No,
for
just
Brian?
to clarify, my comments is I do think we need both, right? You have this and you have the monthly detailed reports.
Yeah.
So, is there a way that, I guess what I'm mad, and you're forgotten more than I'll ever know about accounting, is there, a process or a format that you can work with, to come up with what we would want for monthly accounting?
Yeah. Yeah, the monthly reports. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah, if we can just get, wherever we can get to the data feeds, we can build the report.
And ideally, we have someone with that skill level of creating those reports at the district, that works in the district. I mean,
Well, that's a problem.
yeah,
We're down.
you're down.
We're down in our central staff.
I'm just talking to data analytics person. If you're gonna spend $20,000 on your metrics, you can spend $20,000 on someone to create the reports for you.
I mean, ultimately, our CFO person's going to be doing this, right? Like, that's the person that would be inputting the data, correct?
Some of the bigger data, but she'll be working, he will be working with, the chief financial officer, what do you wanna call it? Where a lot of that data will be coming from and some other sources. But that position will be.
So, Chris, is there a way to automate the data feed into something like this?
Yeah, I'd have to look at it, I haven't seen it, but that's.
You don't automate the data feeds, you create a report, the report feeds this. It's just putting the data in the right place to allow this to populate on a monthly basis. So that's what I'm saying, the person, I wouldn't think of a CFO I wouldn't think of a CFO as the person who creates this. The CFO is the person who tells you what he wants to see, right?
And
Now,
analyze it.
yeah, well, yes, you have to have a data analytics person who does this.
Right.
I mean,
And we don't have that. Well, I'm just telling you the fact.
then you hire a CFO who is
Okay,
willing
but,
is capable of
I'm
doing
just
it.
trying to talk reality. I'm not saying this is bad, good, or indifferent, but if we're gonna use this, we need, people to get trained to do it, and we're down in, the fact is, we're down in central office. I'm not justifying where this stands, our central office expense
No, I totally
compared
get
to
it.
it, but the fact is, we're down. And we're trying to remedy that through some hiring, but. I mean, right now, we're filling a PR person, we're looking at special ed needs, we're looking at, Amanda's position. And there's other positions that feed into that.
Well, if you're hiring a person in the in the accounting group, I don't know if there's a position in the accounting group besides Amanda's position, but if you are, I would recommend that you hire someone who's got data analytics skills that can create these type of reports, because they're invaluable. You're gonna use it in, that type of person you're gonna use in your, every team is gonna make use of that person. Whether it's, you wanna send out a survey, and you want that person to create the data analytics based on the survey, that person should be able to work on every team, and not just singular not just a finance person.
I forgot, I just got this one down, the school choice profile. Really cool, just can see the ingress, egress of school choice students.
Yes, I wanna see.
So like, if you're interested in like where do Grosse Pointe eligible students go when they choose elsewhere? It's this, and one quick tidbit.
Which side is it? Non-resident student FTE enrolled.
So it's on the left, if you're a resident student and you can go somewhere else than Grosse Pointe, that tells you where you are.
462 kids could be going here that don't.
With the wrinkle that I've learned that if you see up here, see Berkeley and Clarkston, and Brighton does this too, I learned. They have this program where they capture partial FTEs
Right.
from,
It's like
From-
teachers they rent almost.
like art classes and music classes, and so it creates, they're not technically district students, but they wouldn't really go here, but it's a bunch of fraction
Right.
of students. There's only a few districts that are kind of allowed to do that, but once you get below like Berkeley, you can see.
So we have 38 students that could go to Grosse Pointe, that go to Harper Woods.
Yeah. Yep, and.
Why do they go to Redford?
I don't know if it's special needs.
Might be special needs.
Yeah.
Well, that could be.
Yeah, so there's anomalies, I mean, again, always an explanation, but when people like, where are they going and how many are there, this tells
Notice the
you.
numbers, wow. That's impressive.
And then where are they coming from, so you can see these are all gonna be special ed.
So
Center
that's
Point.
98,
Yeah.
55.
Hamtramck, Parker Woods, that's that program.
I didn't think we were hosts for South Lion.
You have to look at the,
I don't think we are, that's in South
South
Lake.
Lake, I'm sorry.
No, because, well, I mean, there can always be reasons, as we know from our
Yeah.
residency days, there's sometimes you value.
Teachers,
Yeah.
kids.
Oh, there you go.
yeah, that's right.
There you go.
Yeah.
Very impressive. Thank you, Brendan.
You will, so just real quick, going back to the data analytics person, right, so you need that person when you're continuing to build customized reports, right? If we brought somebody in to create these reports, the next person who has to do it, they just press a button. Right, so
Put the
we
file
could,
good job.
we could look to bring somebody in, whether it be someone in the community that has a skill set, or we get a consultant or somebody to come in and build it, because these, once you build it, it's done.
So couldn't you do that as an outsourced basis and bring that person in, do the job, and you're done?
Yes, and then they train the person to do it, it's basically say, okay, how do I run reports, right? And you just click a couple buttons and you hit run. It's only, it goes, as you go forward and you wanna continue to create these customized reports, you have new information, new building, whatever it may be, that you want, however you wanna slice and dice the data, then you need someone who knows how to do all that. But to get rolling with this,
Mm-hmm.
Database is already there.
that's just
Very impressive. I'm sorry Ryan Case couldn't be here, because I told him that you were gonna show us your,
I can,
you shared that with Ryan, he was very excited about seeing all this. Okay, that brings us to the end of our agenda. Do you have any new business?
I just wanted to bring up the pools.
Oh, yeah, that's important.
There was talk about fundraising for the pools for next year, ending this year. And I don't know if we've heard anything about that. I think it's something that we need to follow up on. Because we sort of put an end date.
Right.
We, I guess, gave a hiatus for the middle school pools for a year, with the idea that people brought up that they would fundraise to, pay for the pools.
Yeah.
I just don't know if there's anybody on that initiative, that you're aware of. Yeah.
That very well,
I haven't,
We follow up, see if we get information back.
I think Robin Hartnett was involved with that.
Say it again?
Robin Hartnett, Hartnett. She was the one that brought up the fundraising issue. And, I don't know if I have her number here.
Lisa had called me a couple weeks ago to get John Fidel's number and to talk with him and the Gator organization, and I provided the names of who are now the president and vice president of that organization, and Point Aquatics as well.
Yeah, maybe I'll start with, Lisa, and see what she knows about it and bring a report back.
I'll send you Robin's contact information so you have it.
Okay.
I know she was involved somehow, but I don't know the real bottom line on it. Okay, anything else, guys? Okay, any public comments? Going once, twice? Okay, any committee member comments?
I would just like to say that I applaud any, type of report that's online that gives us transparency. I think our, Mary Ann and Rebecca really made our website look pretty phenomenal. And I applaud any sort of, report that could be put up on our website, but I do think that our priority should be hiring a qualified deputy, superintendent of business operations. That should be our number one priority before we even think about bringing in someone that's gonna do data analysis. And I also wanna remind our committee that bringing people in costs money, and we did a bunch of cuts, we've let people go, and I think that our number one priority has to be the top, getting a business operations superintendent before we think about hiring anybody else to do reports.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, with that, we are adjourned.
And I just would encourage you guys that, you gotta keep things moving forward, right? So
Right.
I agree, the priority is to hire, but you gotta keep things moving, you gotta keep analyzing, you gotta keep working. So I wouldn't put things off that can be done, and, sure.
I agree with that. Very valid point, thank you. Melissa, thank you for being here.
Yeah.